नमस्कार। समीक्षा में एक बार फिर आपका स्वागत है। समीक्षा हेलो एनआरआई के सौजन्य से प्रस्तुत की जा रही है और आज हम अ, एक ऐसे विषय पे बात करेंगे जिसका अनुमान और जिसकी ग्रेविटी जो है वो शायद पूरे विश्व में मशहूर है। और हमारे इस प्रोग्राम के निर्माता प्रोड्यूसर हैं श्री बीरेन शाह। 1980 की दिहाई में कश्मीर की श्रीनगर घाटी से एक महापलायन हुआ। इस पलायन के दौरान एक अ, विशाल समूह जो माइनॉरिटीज का था वो माइग्रेट कर गया भारत और अन्य देशों में। इस पलायन का एक मुख्य कारण था आतंकवाद। ये इस अल्पसंख्यक जाति के लोग भारत के विभिन्न राज्यों में और कुछ दूसरे देशों में जाकर बस गए। इनको कश्मीरी पंडित के नाम से बुलाया जाता है। आज उस दिवस की 30वीं, इनफैक्ट 31वीं वर्षगांठ है। इस 31वीं वर्षगांठ के उपलक्ष्य में हम एक ऐसी हस्ती से बात करने जा रहे हैं जो कश्मीरी पंडितों की एक पोस्टर लेडी है, जो अ, उनकी सेकंड जनरेशन की एक लीडर हैं, यूथ लीडर। और वो हमें बताएंगी कि ये इशू क्या है और आज कश्मीरी पंडित जो विश्व भर में अब एक प्रवासियों के रूप में बैठे हुए हैं, उनकी स्थिति क्या है। आइए हम मिलते हैं मिस सीमा रोशनी कौल से। रोशनी कौल कश्मीर ओवरसीज एसोसिएशन की यूथ कोऑर्डिनेटर हैं, उसकी मिडवेस्ट की डायरेक्टर हैं। ये ऑर्गेनाइजेशन सभी कश्मीरी पंडितों को मिलाती है और उनकी कई गतिविधियों में इनका हिस्सा लेती है। रोशनी कौल शिकागो की निवासी हैं और ये कई अन्य लीडरशिप रोल्स भी परफॉर्म करती हैं। ये अमेरिकन हिंदूज की एग्जीक्यूटिव मेंबर हैं। साधना स्कूल से इन्होंने संगीत में भी प्रशिक्षण लिया है और हिंदू अमेरिकन फाउंडेशन वॉशिंगटन डीसी के भी एक कार्यकर्ता हैं। तो आइए लेट्स मीट रोशनी कौल। हाय रोशनी, वेलकम टू समीक्षा।
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
So, how are you doing today? It will be a pleasure to talk to you about the Kashmiri Pandits, for the benefit of our viewers. Tell us, what is this Kashmiri Pandit issue all about?
Sure. So our story technically begins around the 1300s. Kashmir was, this beautiful region. It was a largely Hindu region, and it was flourishing. It was the civilization, the community, everything was very much put together. And there's already been a lot of archaeological finds that have demonstrated that these people were very advanced. And over time, there were a lot of invasions in Kashmir, especially with the Mughals. And each invasion, unfortunately, as they all do, brought an onslaught of violence. And about every 100 years, there would be an exodus of Kashmiri Hindus. There have been seven exoduses to this day, the most recent being in 1990, which I think most people are familiar with.
So there are 7 exodus and we only talk of one, Roshni?
Yes, that is true.
So we are only the 7th one, which happened 31 years ago, is known to us. Is that true?
That's true. That's true.
So there's 6 others. Tell us all about those as well.
Yeah, those I think they're very extensive. I myself, I'm learning more about those because there unfortunately is not much, there is historic evidence that it occurred, but we're still in the process of learning more and more about what happened. What we do know was that a lot of our numbers were killed off, to put it realistically. Kashmir has been such a tumultuous region that different rulers have come in to take control of the land. And with each ruler, comes new rules. And a lot of them were religiously fueled to promote division in Kashmir, and usually putting Hindus and posing them as the villains and making them seem like the others, even when they were the actual indigenous population of Kashmir. So over time, they were swept out every 100 years. So again, by the 1990s, there was already such a small amount of Kashmiri Hindus left. And, they were holding on to their land for the sake of their ancestors, for their livelihood. This was their region. It's their identity. They're holding on. And alas, especially with the rise of terrorism, 1990 kind of, led to this brink of the seventh Exodus, which is what, my parents and their generation was affected by. So I can speak more about the 1991. I think the other ones, though, would have to be another conversation.
So for the others, I mean, that means that you are, like I said, that you are the youth director. So were you born after, where were you born? And tell me, when your family fled, is it your father who migrated? Were you born that time or after? Tell me something about yourself and your family.
Sure. So I personally was born here in Illinois. My father was forced out of Kashmir in 1990 when he was around 20 years old, so around my age because I'm 21. And he and his family had to live in a refugee camp as they, were forced out of Kashmir, forced out of their home. And he had to reestablish himself in society. He had to build, his family had to come together, find a new home for themselves. And after he and my mom met later in Gujarat, was when they migrated to the United States. And then I was born in 1999 here.
So what are your, how do you visualize staying away from Kashmir and not being able to go back? Have you ever gone back to India ever since? Has your father ever been to his native place again?
That's heartbreaking to say, but I have been to India many times, maybe 7, 8 times, but I've never been able to go to Kashmir.
You've never been able to go. You know why I ask this question is that, do you feel the pain of missing your homeland? Like we people migrated from, say, from other places, and our parents had always been talking of their homeland and their houses, how they had the buildings and mohallas and how the interactions. So, but your case is very different, that you people became refugee within your own country, like you had to be moved from Srinagar and you settled within India and you became refugees. So when you think, tell me, how you digest that pain, and how do you manage those conflicts?
Sure.
As a second generation Kashmiri Pandit who has not been to Kashmir at all, where you belong.
Yes. So I feel torn. I really do. It's hard. It's really hard to hear all my friends talk about going to their grandparents' homes in India. A lot of them complaining about having to spend a month in India with their grandparents, in their village, on the farm, without internet access and all of that. And just knowing that I don't have that opportunity. I can't go to my family's homeland. I can't see the house where my grandfather lived, where my father grew up. I can't see the farm that he lived on, or his cow whose name was Lolly. I can't see these things. It feels like a part of my identity has been snatched away from me. So it's hard because like my dad's side, a lot of them have they've established themselves in Jammu and New Delhi. So those are the places I visit, but we can't visit the valley where he grew up because it's not safe enough.
So, but if given a chance, like now India government under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we are very proud of him. He is making efforts to resettle the Kashmiri Pandits back into the valley. Now, the question is that if you are given a chance and you are facilitated to go back, would you go back?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you and your father go back and settle there?
Maybe, well, since I was born in the United States, for me personally, I probably wouldn't settle there because of everything that happened, I've been raised here and this is where my life is. But one of my goals is since I'm pursuing medicine, I really want to, establish some sort of relief in Kashmir, especially for Kashmiri Hindus that continue to live in refugee camps. I want to make frequent visits to Kashmir if allowed, to provide good quality healthcare. Especially as a Kashmiri, I have a better understanding of Kashmiri culture and can better treat, those populations. So that's definitely a goal of mine, to be able to support my community in Kashmir as they begin to resettle, and those that are still affected in refugee camps.
Now, you said that you are youth director of Kashmir Overseas Association, which is a pan-American, maybe pan-world over this association exists, and you are the youth coordinator of the Midwest chapter, which has about 8 or 9 or 10 states under it. So tell us, does this organization facilitate activities that you are talking about?
Yeah, they do.
What do they do?
It's a really wonderful organization. The bulk of it is preserving Kashmiri culture, preserving Kashmiri community, hosting events where people can come together and talk to other Kashmiri Pandits, other Kashmiri Hindus. And we also are putting together language modules to preserve the Kashmiri language. They are hosting these medical trips where esteemed physicians that are part of the Kashmiri Hindu community are able to visit Kashmir and provide in those refugee camps. They also have set up many different ways to help fund children's education in Kashmir. They're really working hard to preserve Kashmiri culture and make sure that Kashmiri voices are heard.
So there is another point of view which is very prevalent in the universal circles. I'm not saying governmental circles or the social circles. Universally, people are talking that the government has given them so much benefits, these Kashmiri Pandits, after they fled the valley. Like they have given them jobs, special quotas in the jobs, special quotas in the universities. They have been given pension. In addition to pension, they are very well settled in very high positions now. And they are so much in these 30, 31 years, so much entrenched wherever they had moved, that now they don't even want to go back. Is that true? What is your position on that?
So I would say that that's not entirely true. I think a lot of people think that way. For my generation, since a lot of us were born in the United States, a lot of us, this is home to us, and we want to be able to visit Kashmir and visit our homeland. But resettlement for us maybe isn't a thing because we were never settled there in the first place. But for my parents' generation, and especially my grandparents' generation, to be able to go back to their homeland and resettle there and, have their land back where their ancestors were, that is a big deal to them. So I see the argument where people are saying, oh, these people are settled in such high positions, why would they want to leave? But what I don't think these people are considering is that Kashmiris, we really value our identity. We really value our homeland. And as important as financial security and stable jobs and all of that is, these people don't know what it's like to not have your homeland with you. They don't know what it's like to be away from your homeland. So they can't see that far into how valuable it would be for these people to go back and resettle and kind of get that identity back.
So does your organization, which is Kashmir Overseas Association, of which you are the youth director in Midwest, does it undertake any initiatives to educate the new generation like yours, and also non-Kashmiri Pandits who talk like that, to educate them as to what the issue is all about? Do you take any endeavors in that?
A lot of us, like Kashmiri youth in general, do speak out and educate, especially when Article 370 and all was occurring. We hosted lots of talks across different universities. There are a lot of different Kashmiri Hindu organizations, luckily, in the United States. So a lot of different ones were hosting different talks. A lot of Hindu student councils at different universities were hosting talks to spread awareness. So it's good to have that support. We as an organization focus more on preserving culture and community, but there are other organizations that focus more on activism.
And what is the population of Kashmiri Hindus in the United States?
So I would say that Kashmiri Hindus have occupied certain pockets within the United States where they're more heavily populated. So I can speak as to those. There are Kashmiri Hindus all over the United States. Unfortunately, not very big in numbers because of all the trauma and mass murder. But one of the bigger pockets is where I am based in Chicago. I would say there are a couple hundred of us here. The East Coast has a heavy concentration of Kashmiri Hindus. I'd say more than Chicago, and Texas as well has a very solid group.
One of our, very large Sikh population migrated from Pakistan to India during 1947 partition. You can definitely, I correlate to you with that point of view that there is another population that migrated out of Pakistan to India, and there's another population that migrated out of Kashmir, Srinagar Valley to the rest of India. And they left behind a lot of properties, and they were very beautiful bungalows and institutions and buildings and landmarks. So one of the member from Singapore, this gentleman went back to Pakistan and he documented what is happening to that heritage that the Sikhs left behind. It was their religious places, it was their buildings, it was their palaces of the kings. And now the question, and the forts that Maharaja Ranjit Singh had built all along. So he documented in two thick volumes. So my question from you is that is your organization or anybody in your community undertaken that endeavor to document what you people left behind and what is the status of those properties today? How they look like? Are they deserted? Have they been occupied? Are there some people gone back? So also tell me what is the status of the house, that building, which your father left behind. Tell us something about that.
Sure. So naturally, it's a little different with Kashmir because it's still a very dangerous place to be, especially for Kashmiri Hindus. We are easily targeted in Kashmir. Still, some people have managed to go back and see where, their homeland. And, it's come down to almost all of the homes that were occupied by Kashmiri Hindus have either been burnt down, destroyed, or replaced. Or if the house is still standing, another family has moved in. And all markers of the Hindu identity that might have been tied to that home are gone. It's almost like they've removed all the Kashmiri Hindus and then try to make it seem like they were never there. And it's really sad when people go back to their home and to see the state of the place that they grew up. To imagine, going to your home one day and then it looks different. It might be a different structure there and the land that your ancestors had lived on for so many years. And now there's another family living there. And it's not that you chose to move out, you were forced out. So it's really hard.
Roshni, you are talking of the situation which emanated out of 1989, which is 31 years ago. And if I talk to you about a situation that emanated in the year 2019, which was just 1 year ago, and that is the abrogation of Article 370. That has led to a very big difference in the local legislation and the laws. There are 122 acts which were not applicable or applied in Jammu and Kashmir earlier, which are now being applied because of that 370 has been abrogated. And with that position, it facilitates many of the people. I mean, it offers a new domicile status. So that means things are comfortable there under the watch of Prime Minister Modi. Now tell us that with this comfortable environment now emerging over there, Why not to go and get your properties back and live in those beautiful houses and bungalows? And rest assured, I will come and visit you there.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of Kashmiri Hindus have started getting their domicile certificates because they do have proof that this was their property. So a lot of people are already in the process. Unfortunately, those beautiful bungalows and all of those homes, a lot of them have been destroyed. But it'd be great for people to be able to rebuild their homes and start anew, and have that identity back. So people are. I wouldn't say the situation still is entirely comfortable because there's still a lot of, tension in the air. Because there's a lot of lashback about Kashmiri Hindus resettling, especially because there's still a lot of radical insurgency that thrives in the valley, and these are
Correct.
the original people who pushed the Kashmiri Hindus out in the first place, and they're still there. They're living there. So it's going to be hard for Kashmir Hindus to resettle safely in the valley, but hopefully with the government's assistance, it can happen. So that's what we're hoping for. But Kashmiri Hindus are in the process of getting their domicile certificates.
So, does your father still talk of those memories? Does the Exodus still haunts him? When you sit down at a dinner table, you as the next generation Kashmiri Hindu who has not born there and who has not seen that Exodus, and does your family over the dinner table recollect, recall, and remember those moments at any time?
Absolutely. I would say rather than dinner, after dinner, especially growing up, my dad would sit down with my brother and I, and we would recount these stories about his life in Kashmir. And when we were younger, they were all happy stories. When we were 5, 6, 7, he couldn't tell us about the Exodus at that point. We knew something had happened, but he told us about stories growing up on the farm, all the animals, walking to school, playing by the river. He told us all these happy stories. But then once we were old enough, he introduced us to the horrors that he had faced. And it was really heartbreaking as his children to know what he and our family had gone through. So yeah, I feel like when he tells these stories of what happened to him, I feel like I'm reliving these moments as his daughter, to hear the details of what happened to so many of our relatives and friends who were murdered, to hear about the very night that he had to leave.
Tell us about the night when you fled. Tell us in detail what you have heard about.
Yeah, sure. So it was around January 19th. To preface this, though, I'll mention that September 14th, 1989, is called Martyrs' Day because it is the first official murder of a Kashmiri Hindu of the 7th Exodus, and that was of Pandit Tika Lal Kaplu. He was a very prominent leader in the Kashmiri Hindu community in the valley, and he was the first one to be murdered. And after that, slowly over time, more and more Kashmiri Hindus started getting killed. So around January 19th, that's kind of known as the Exodus Day, the biggest day of forced migration. Around then is when one night, these terrorists had already been infiltrating the Hindu villages, sending out warnings. They would go to the loudspeakers on the mosques and tell all the Kashmiri Hindus that, hey, if you don't leave, we will kill you and we will take your women with us, and saying all these terrible things. And they had very short time to leave. They couldn't take anything with them. They didn't have time. All these family heirlooms have been left behind, photographs, memories, everything burnt down because they couldn't take them. They had one night to leave everything behind. So my father, his mother, his sister, his brother, all were forced out of their home one night. They had to hide in a school building, and it's Kashmir. It's so cold. It's January in Kashmir. I feel like people don't realize that when
Cold, but it is very beautiful place, Roshni. You haven't been there. I have served there. The Pir Panjal ranges, they are so beautiful. It is the Switzerland of India, I must tell
heaven
you.
on earth. It is heaven on earth.
Yes.
Sad that heaven on earth has been stained with blood, you know? This beautiful place, it's gorgeous, you know, it's absolutely perfect. And it was a place of secularism and togetherness. And, you know, so much division has been brought to Kashmir, which led to, you know, my father and his family being kicked out of their home. So it's sad because we want to restore that beauty of Kashmir. And part of that beauty is the community. You know, the geography is beautiful, the waterfalls, the lakes, the land, but the community is, you know, the people who've preserved this over time, they matter too. So yeah.
You know, you are a real leader, I must tell you. I mean, the type of organizations that you're involved in, the level of your involvement in those organizations, and the places that you are involved in, it indicates that, you know, hon har birwan ke hoth chikne path. So we can, you know, coming events cast their shadows before, and we can see you as a budding woman leader in the society, and there is no doubt about that. Having said that, tell us, what is your solution to this problem? How you visualize that we can solve this issue?
The Kashmir issue is a big one. So many governmental bodies, you know, the United Nations, the referendum, so many different policies have been put into place to try to solve this issue. But unfortunately, it's also an issue between two nations that have had so much conflict, India and Pakistan, especially with China bordering Kashmir. It's a very delicate regional conflict. Personally, how I see it is that I understand that there's also this freedom movement in Kashmir, which is created and backed by the very same radical insurgents that kicked out Kashmiri Hindus. These people have started this freedom movement in Kashmir, and they keep saying Azadi, Azadi, freedom for Kashmir, whereas their only plan is to use Kashmir as a violent region and, you know, get rid of all the secularism. And the problem is, if Kashmir were to be free, you now have China, which is already currently having tension at the border of Kashmir, which is, and already, you know, they have a part of Kashmir, and Kashmir doesn't have its own army, its own military. It can't fend for itself. So if it were to become independent, it wouldn't last. I doubt it would last a day. You have these nations that are trying to take it. Luckily, as part of India, it is protected. It is a part of Indian culture. It's a part of Indian heritage. It is protected. And insurgents know this. They want Kashmir to be separated away from India so that they can use it for their own motives. And there's a lot of brainwashing happening in the region in order to do this.
But I must tell you that, you know, with the abrogation of Article 370, this issue is of the past. It is history that it can be separated. We have now two union territories there, a new administration,
Yes.
new way of looking at the things, new domicile structure, and a very strong nation, which India is. And the Republic of India today is a leading power. So
Yeah.
those who think that they can take it away, I think they are living in fool's paradise.
Agreed.
And I totally agree with you that it is very secure and it is in the right place where it belongs to. And I think you're with the budding leaders that you people are, you must be taking some initiatives to educate your peers, like your friends and people of your age group. Do you do that?
Yeah, especially on social media. That's the easiest.
My question is that is it only that culture and language and food that you protect, or is it that you also talk to them about these issues?
We talk about politics, absolutely. Not as part of the organization, but as individuals. I use my social media platform, like on Instagram especially, to educate my peers about what's going on, the politics behind it, the history, what has led to this, the violence, the terrorism, what is going on in this region. I think it's really critical that our generation learns about the truth of what is going on, because there's a lot of skewed media out there that is not portraying the history, or they're trying to cover Kashmir with no understanding of the complexity of the history.
You know, when we talk of history, one very important aspect is food. So I'm sure that the most famous part is Rogan Josh. So is it cooked in your family? Are they just specialists in that? I love it, by the way.
I know. Well, we're a vegetarian family. My brother eats meat, and he loves Rogan Josh. My dadi, who is in Delhi, she makes Rogan Josh. It's a big part of Kashmir culture and very much liked by the rest of India, I know. And there's some really awesome Kashmiri foods. A lot of them are surprisingly plant-based. I think people know Rogan Josh the most because people find it so yummy. But there's different types of paneer. We use a yellow stained paneer. And it has a cinnamon flavor. We have Kashmiri rajma, which is a little different. We eat nadru, which is lotus root. We cook collard greens in a different way, and we call it manjhak. So there are all these really cool Kashmiri foods, and that's definitely a big part of preserving culture.
But let me tell you, I am so impressed that I'm going to call on you one day and say, cook for me the Kashmiri Rajma, okay?
Yeah, of course.
So thank you so much. It was so wonderful talking to you. It was amazing. We wish you all the best. You have a very educative interview. Take care and thank you so much.
Thank you.